Hello, everybody, and welcome to Astroviews. It's the show where we talk to interesting people about the universe. Today, my guest is Heather Laird. She is an avid volunteer, very active on social media. She loves space, she loves cats. What more do we possibly need? Heather, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
I wanted you to start by just introducing yourself to everybody out there who doesn't know you.
I'm Heather. I'm from Calgary, Alberta, Canada. I'm 35 years old. I'm a legal assistant. That's what I do during the day. Yeah, I love cats, especially mine. I'll be surprised if he doesn't make an appearance while I'm on the video. And I've been a big fan of space now for 6, 7 years.
See, that's interesting. You know, a lot when we talk to professional astronomers or science communicators, a lot of them have been doing space for 20 years, 25 years, 30 years. So I'm really interested to get your perspective on things as somebody who didn't start in space very young or very early. But that said, you're very active in astronomy and space these days. So what kind of things are you doing in the space world?
Right now, I'm volunteering as an ambassador and I'm the leader on the ambassador program for the AAVSO. That's the American Association of Variable Star Observers. And I'm also helping them with their diversity committee. So I've been doing a lot of that. And I'm helping you with moderating your space club, which is awesome. In the past, I worked with another organization as on a volunteer basis, doing public outreach, and I was a director for a while, and it was quite eye-opening, and I got to meet a lot of people across the country in the amateur astronomy community, and see how all of that works, and get excited with people that love it just as much as I do.
That's excellent. What got you started in astronomy and space though? Like do you just say like, hey, today I woke up and I was interested in space and so I started volunteering? How did it happen for you?
Pretty much. I was actually sick for a while and I wasn't able to work. I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia. So I found myself with a lot of time. And my dad had bought me a book, I think in 2012, by Carl Sagan. I never read it. So I started going through all of my books and decided to pick up that one and finished it and realized, oh, this was the stuff that I was really interested in as a kid and wasn't able to do anything with. So I started to investigate it. I managed to find a meetup group for a local club and just dove right in.
That's excellent. And you've been pursuing that ever since, and really you've ramped it up. You've done a lot of really interesting things. Like you're putting a lot of time into these other endeavors, into these astronomy and space endeavors.
I am, and I think it's because I want others to see that it's not just a specialized, just you don't have to be a certain type of person to enjoy this stuff. The stars are for everybody, and it doesn't matter your age when you get into it. If you're younger, you're older, you don't need a certain set of skills. You can just use your eyes. You can, if you have a pair of binoculars, you can get started. A camera, you can even learn how to do variable star research. You can measure brightness of stars just using your DSLR camera. I haven't quite done that yet, but I'm excited to. I can do it from my balcony. But there's so much out there, and it's just about, I think, helping these organizations realize that they need a little bit of a nudge to welcome everybody. And it's not that they haven't been trying. It's just, there's a lot of stigma and whichever. And people feeling sometimes that they're not smart enough to enter a room with a bunch of astronomers, like they need to know certain things, and that's not the case. They're all very helpful and wanting to teach and just get excited about it with you.
You actually make a really good point about that, about this stigma of the astronomer, the astrophysicist, the even the amateur who's got these giant telescopes looking up at the sky, and I think there is a lot of stigma of fear around, wow, these people are so smart, so intelligent. I mean, I can say that as an astronomer myself, right? But there's a, you kind of put people up on a pedestal when they're an actual scientist, right? But the reality is that the universe is for everyone. I mean, I say that a lot because that's the tagline of astronomy in action, is space for everyone. And so I think once you kind of make that first step and it becomes a little bit more accessible, you do what you did and you just launch into it and you're able to do all these amazing things.
Yeah, and that's kind of, I think, why I keep powering forward, is I want to show people that they don't need to be scared of it. And they're, all of these organizations are trying to find better ways to be accessible to everybody, and it's exciting. It's an exciting time right now, I think.
I agree, definitely. So now that you're in the astronomy and space world, you're volunteering with AVSO. What goals do you have? Or do you have any goals in astronomy and space? I mean, I think it would be perfectly acceptable to say, hey, I just really like volunteering with this organization. But are there any bigger goals, any maybe even observing goals? Is there anything that you'd like to take a look at that you haven't before?
I want to learn how to use my telescope finally. Can you believe it? Yeah, well, when I started volunteering, I kind of dove really headfirst into a lot of the governance and the organization part. So I really, and because I work during the day and all that kind of stuff, I wasn't able to really pick up on it. Plus, I do still have that fear of, I don't know how this thing works. My old telescope, Lunatron, unfortunately broke. She was very easy to, I could observe with her. I was used to be able to do stuff from the balcony. But I fell, and I don't want to, I literally was bringing her back inside and I fell on top of it. Aww. And it broke. So I had to get a new one, and I wasn't paying attention to what I was buying on Amazon, and I managed to get a new telescope that's got a German equatorial mount. I need to learn how to calibrate that during the day and then figure out how to use it. But I'm nervous because I feel like, oh, I'm going to break it, or I need somebody there, but I just need to, again, like I normally dive into anything, I just need to do it.
I think that's good life advice in general, just to, whether you're working on any skill. And astronomy, even at the amateur level, can be a little bit daunting because there's all these little moving pieces, and this connects to that, and that connects to this, and then, we open this up and you choose this eyepiece and the mount goes here and it balances and it aligns, and there's so many little steps between, hey, I want to get a telescope, and hey, here's the object I want to look at, right? So it can be daunting, and I think that turns a lot of people off. And so I think it was smart, you mentioned earlier about binoculars as a great first step. But when you do make that dive into a telescope, it requires a little bit of courage to go in and say, let's just fiddle with this thing and see what happens.
I was surprised I was able to put it together.
Well, that's a great first step, I think.
Yeah, exactly. I think, and another goal for me is just, I don't have major goals other than just being a part of it. Like you said earlier, I'm really enjoying volunteering and just being a part of this whole community. And my, I guess, main goal would be diversity and inclusion. That's why I volunteer a lot on those committees. I think it's very important to just be aware, because again, you've got some issues within the astronomy community that need work, a lot of work.
I'll be the first to admit that there's not a lot of people of color, not a lot of LGBTQ plus members of the astronomy community, professional or amateur. And so that to me immediately says, well, how do we include more people of color and LGBTQ plus in the community? How do we do that? And so I'll ask you, how do we do that?
We make it accessible to them and make sure they know that those spaces are safe, and they're people too, like they're exactly like everybody else. So it's just, and again, there's obviously there's a huge history behind a lot of it. But it's again removing those stigmas, and it's up to us to do the work, and we have to do that.
Definitely. Well, I'm glad you're on the forefront doing the work with AVSO, and
yeah. One of many.
Right. Okay, so we talked a little bit about your goals, a little bit about what led you down this path. Now we're just going to go into something a little bit more straightforward. What is your favorite celestial object, and why?
I'm going to go with the Star Nursery in Orion's Nebula, because it was the first thing I looked at through a giant telescope at the Rothney Observatory, which is run by the University of Calgary here. It was the first time, it was just in black and white, like there was no filters or anything, and it was in real time. Well, but yeah, it was amazing. My tiny eye is looking through this massive scope, and it was just so exciting for me. It was also the first thing I ever imaged with my DSLR. And then my second would have to be here in our own solar system. It's Jupiter, because Jupiter is like the big sibling of the solar system, and it's constantly knocking things out of the way so it doesn't hit us.
Those are wonderful choices, and I love your reasoning as well. It brings to mind a Carl Sagan quote, because I've got one of those for everything. But he said, "When you make the discovery yourself, even if it's the first time you've seen it, you'll never forget it." I think that was the exact quote. I'm going to have to check that. But the idea is that when you look through a real telescope at this real object in outer space, you're making that discovery for yourself. And that's what you'll never forget. I can show people pictures of the Orion Nebula and the Star Nursery. I can show people pictures of Jupiter, and they'll be like, "That's cool. That's really neat. I like that." Even enthusiasts are like, "That's a cool picture. Well done." But until you actually go to the eyepiece of the telescope, look up at that object, and realize that it's really there, that's the thing that you never forget.
It's so inspiring. Actually, I'm and another thing that people could, I don't know if it's going to be up in the sky right now, or when you put this up for everyone, is the comet. So I actually keep seeing photos of this comet, and it's not the same. I need to wake up at 3 a.m. and go and look east and see if I can catch it myself, because I haven't seen one since I was a little kid.
So you saw a comet when you were a little kid as well?
Yeah, I think it was, what was the one in the, I guess it would be either late 80s or early 90s. Was it Halley's? No.
Halley's comet was, I think, 1987. But 1997 was Hale-Bopp. That was a big one.
It was Hale-Bopp. It was Hale-Bopp. Yeah.
Nice. I'm jealous because even though I was like 9 or 10 years old, I didn't actually see it when it happened. So
I'll never forget it. We were walking from my neighbor's house because my parents had it was a visit one. I think it was either in the winter. It was in the evening. It was dark, and we were just walking home down the street, and my dad pointed it out, and I was like, "What?" Like, so in '97, I would have been 12 years old.
That's amazing. So there you go. You discovered a comet that I hadn't. That's really fantastic. No, I'm glad you got to see that. It was apparently quite beautiful. But the comet that's currently in our skies, I think it's C2020 Neowise.
That's right.
I got my telescope ready so that I can go out tomorrow morning to take a look.
Awesome.
Yeah. Are you going to get up early to go see it?
I think so. I'm going to try tomorrow morning. Yeah, because I've got to take a walk down the street, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to see it. We'll see.
Well, you know what? If I do manage to get some photos of it tomorrow, I'll put my own photos into your interview. But if I can't get a picture, I'll borrow somebody else's photo. All right, so we did your favorite celestial object. I want to ask you, as somebody who hasn't been in astronomy for a long time, but who has worked very deeply with outreach, with volunteering, with organizations that do a lot of outreach, what advice would you have for some young astronomer or scientist, or just somebody who really is interested in looking up at the night sky but feels a little bit shy about it? What advice would you have for them?
I would say just start talking about it. Start talking to your parents about it. Start talking to your teachers about it. Show an interest. Check out your libraries. And then obviously, like, when you talk to those people, they're going to be able to help you find a local club or an event or something for you to check out. There's planetariums in many cities. So it's just start discovering those things on your own and dive into it. Have fun. I didn't have that opportunity when I was a kid, and I wish I had, and I wish I'd kept talking about it.
Well, it's never really too late to start doing it. You always wish you could have started earlier. I mean, I started when I was 8 years old in astronomy and space. I wish I could have started earlier because I would have more time of it. So I totally understand how you feel from that front. But that said, I think you're a really good example of somebody who, even though they've joined it late, you've had the confidence to go and dive into it and volunteer and learn about it. And I see you posting really interesting things on social media all the time, that information that I don't always have right away too, about different things that are going on in space. So I'm using you as a resource now, which is really exciting.
I follow a lot of very interesting people, and I've managed to make some incredible connections over the last 6 years. And friendships too. So it's amazing seeing what they're doing. It goes from being, students to astrophysicists to volunteers that do the same thing that I do, astrophotographers, people that are just getting into it. And there's so much out there. So yeah, on social media, I like to share everything that everybody's up to, and I'm glad that you're checking it out.
Definitely. Hey, I've still got to get my news somehow, right? And I'd rather get it from people who I enjoy talking to, enjoy hearing from. So if you could chat with any person, I usually say scientist, but any person, living or previously living, who would you choose and why?
And I have two, and I'd like to have dinner with both of them.
At the same dinner, or would you want like a one-on-one with each of them?
No, at the same time.
Cool.
It would be Carl Sagan and Helen Hogg.
Great choices. Why those two in particular?
Dr. Hogg, because she wasn't able to do her research as a scientist when she first started. She had to actually sneak into the observatory with her husband, who was working there at the time. They wouldn't give her a job. And start that way. And she'd always had the kids with her, and it took her a while, but eventually she was able to break into academia, and she became a professor and did a ton of public outreach. She had her own show. She wrote so many papers. And she's just a super inspiring woman. And she just kind of broke down a lot of barriers. So I would love to talk to her about that kind of stuff and talk about her direct experience and, see her sense of humor and stuff like that. And then obviously Carl Sagan, because it was his book that got me into it. And I just the way he sees or saw the universe and the work that he did was just still so childlike and amazing. And he was still so fascinated, and he was able to bring that to everybody else with his science communication. Again, so for Helen and him, they're science communicators, and they were able to really be almost kind of a face for it. And I could learn a lot from that.
You really hit the nail on the head with both of them. I honestly can't envision a world where, as somebody who loves astronomy and space and who does it professionally, not being able to walk up to a telescope and use this amazing telescope. Like I could probably call somebody and say, hey, can I go and use this telescope? And they'd be like, yeah, sure, provided, I go through the right channels and everything. Yeah. But I can't imagine having that be a challenge. And so for Helen to not only have that as a challenge, but still succeed in the way that she did, it's really inspiring. And I think you definitely hit the nail on the head with Carl as well, this childlike wonder. I think that's what he had his whole life. And that is what really rubbed off on people.
I think so. And it reminds you that, that never really leaves you, and you're allowed to tap into it. And that's kind of what I think I've been doing these last 6 years. And it's been so much fun.
You follow a lot of news to do with space and astronomy. Do you have an idea what the next big discovery might be? Like, what do you think would be a really cool discovery that would come forward in the next 10 years in astronomy?
I'm hoping kind of one of two things. Actual water on Mars or some kind of liquid. And hopefully I'm hoping to see, and I don't know if we will, because I'd have to look up what's actually going to be sent out into the solar system, but life, even if it's microbial or something, maybe it's in one of those massive oceans, and and then they're out there. So I'm hoping we can see that in the next 10 years. I don't know. I think I might be cutting it a little too close on that one, but I can hope.
I wouldn't be that surprised at all. And I mean, the water on Mars thing is getting stronger and stronger, right? Like there's been flowing salty water. There's a giant glacier under a third of the planet. So I think finding more and more of that water might actually lead to your microbial life
I
that we
hope so.
might find, which would kind of be really cool. And that might happen sooner than we think. So I don't necessarily think 10 years is too far away. So I hope your prediction comes true. So talking about Mars a little bit then, when do you think the first human will actually walk on Mars?
I think it'll be in our lifetime. I don't know when, but I think we'll see it. I might be 80 when it happens. But I honestly do think that we'll see it because we've got more resources, more privatization of space. There's more research being done, and it's the possibility is just getting closer and closer for us.
Do you think that the first human being to walk on Mars is alive right now?
I think so.
Ooh, exciting. So that
But
might happen sooner than we think.
I'm hoping.
Yeah. On that note, would you ever travel into space given the chance?
I don't know. And normally I answer this question by saying no, because there's so much here that I would love to, explore and discover. And I like the safety of not putting myself in that situation. However, if I get the chance to check out and get into orbit at some point and I can afford it, I'm doing that for sure. Absolutely. But me going to Mars, not so much. I like my cat and I can't bring him. So
So that's great. So all you really need is just a nice ticket on a little rocket, or maybe even a space plane like with Virgin Galactic.
yeah,
Orbit the Earth a couple of times, enjoy the weightlessness, get a
exactly.
nice in-flight meal, and come back safely to Earth so you can see your kitty.
Yep.
That's perfect. It's weird. I'm not used to actually being on a camera, but I really love talking to people. So it's a little bit weird for me to go from, hey, we're face to face and we're having this conversation, or I'm face to 50, 100, 200 people and we're talking about space. It's a little bit weird for me to actually be over a camera and to be looking at a camera and having this conversation. So
Yeah.
it's taken a little bit of work to build that skill and get it a little bit more sharpened.
You're doing great. I was so nervous when actually I think I'm better on camera because I'm not used to being on camera at all. But since I've done my Canadian Women in Astronomy talk in public in front of a room full of people twice, and then online for even more people, being actually physically there was way more daunting than doing it. I was like safe in my little so this is I think I've discovered I'm quite the introvert. But I used to really dislike the sound of my own voice, but it was the podcast I did with Randall Rosenfeld for the history committee with RASC, and then finally listening to it got me more comfortable with doing this kind of stuff. So you're way ahead of me though. Like I'm pretty proud of you.
I really appreciate that. I've been doing this for about 12 years now, this live presentation stuff. I actually started out doing shows for high school kids, and we'd blow stuff up for when I worked for McMaster Engineering. We'd
That's awesome.
blow up stuff and promote their engineering programs. So audiences don't even phase me anymore. But
Oh, I love it.
what was your talk about? I'm kind of curious about. It was women in astronomy, Canadian women in astronomy. Was that right?
Yeah, it was Canadian Women in Astronomy, but because I did it for Rask and Sky News, and originally when I created the presentation, I had it half and half. So it was pretty Rask specific about women in the organization that had catapulted it forward and done a lot of the work in the past. So it was like the last 150 years. And then obviously the women in academia, and then also pioneers and stuff like that. But I think I started with, what's his name? I should know this. It's Charlotte Small, who is the Métis wife of, he was the explorer who used the sky. Anyway, it's gone. But I start off with her because I feel like she's kind of the first to start the recreational aspect of it in Canada, and helping her husband, navigate with their 13 kids and exploring Canada. And then I move into some other people, and it's just, it's actually on YouTube.
This was really fun. We talked about a lot of really interesting things. Thank you so much for joining me. Where could we find you? Where could the people out there go to find you on social media, to ask you some questions, to get in touch with you about AVSO or the other volunteering that you're doing? How do we reach you?
Social media would probably be the best. So my username is @KalunaCarbon. And you can also reach me via email on my website. I just launched it. It's very new. It's astrofem.blog.
That's perfect. So thanks a lot for joining me for the episode. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
And that concludes this episode of Astroviews. Keep checking back. We've got new episodes coming up all the time as I talk to some really fascinating people about their connection with the universe. Thanks for tuning in. People think that it can be very difficult to do astronomy without a telescope or without binoculars or without this expensive equipment. But really, all you need is your eyes and your curious mind. And to help that, Astronomy in Action has come up with our own space club. And this isn't a space club where you need a telescope or binoculars or to stay up all night. In partnership with slew.com, we give you access to remote telescopes all over the world so that when you feel the time is right, you can pop online and look through one of their huge telescopes that they have in these perfectly clear dark sky sites around the world. You can take your own images, learn about different objects through quests and challenges, and have a lot of fun as part of our community. If you'd like to join, go to astronomyinaction.com/spaceclub. We hope to see you there.